Hi y'all, and welcome to Spill the Spirituality. We are a community of people who are together and on our own personal journeys trying to discover or be discovered by the life that holds together what we know and what we don't know. We're here not because we think we found all the answers, though we may have discovered a few answers along the journey, but we're here because we love the questions. We really do. I'm Trey Hall. I'm a pastor, I am a pastry enthusiast, and I am a dog dad, among many, many other things. My friend Jazz Amparfar is not with us today, and so we miss you, Jazz, and look forward to seeing you again next time. This is a show about trying to find the spirituality running through everyday life. But there is no bouncer at the door of this podcast. So whether you consider yourself religious or sacrilegious, faithful or faithless, my cup runneth over, or how great thou art, you are truly welcome here. Welcome to Spill the Spirituality.
Lost in translation. Let's give our daughters difficult names that require energy and alertness to say, names that require the full use of a tongue. For our mothers who exercise their vocal cords daily to whisper out their broken English. My small goddess, never allowed to fill the spaces she occupied, remaining unseen, unheard, lost in translation, growing wishes in her children. My mother, my ma, her hair the colour of plums, helps me write poems about freedom with tea leaves and haldi stains. Her hands are always warm, oils filled with dreams in her palm, which she rubs into my head, braids into my hair, so my mind grows the power that she passes on. My mother gave me a glass of milk every day so I could grow into a tall woman that I am today, so that no one will ignore me when I walk into a room. So you can hear all of mine and my mother's stories, so that nothing gets lost in translation.
So beautiful. That is the voice and the whole person of our guest today, Jaspreet Kaur. Wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Also known as Behind the Netra.
Yes.
That poem, so many things. Names that require energy to say. Mm-hmm. I had to ask, what is haldi? Haldi stained?
Haldi stained.
What is haldi stained?
Haldi, you'll know what it is. It's turmeric.
It's turmeric.
It's turmeric, yes. Haldi you'll find in all Indian, South Asian cooking. It's a staple in a brown family's home. It's now everywhere, which is so interesting. We see turmeric being used in coffees and teas and every recipe now, but that was just a staple in my home. So as you know, if you've ever cooked or dealt with turmeric, it will stain your fingertips. Yeah. And that was something I would see on my mother's fingertips growing up, and like it's quite a familiar sight and smell. That kind of is a childhood memory that is something that I kind of hold quite dearly when I think of her hands. So yeah, that's haldi.
That poem is doing so many things. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I heard was this sense of the wrestling with, or the juxtaposition of things seen, things unseen, things unknown, mm-hmm. but then all this visuality, all this taste and texture. And so those things coming together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I'm writing it, I've got a vision in mind, or a story in mind, or my own interpretation of a story I'm sharing. But depending on who's listening to it, or who reads it, or who sees it, depending on their own baggage or depending on their own lives, they'll interpret it in whatever way they want to, which I think is beautiful. And that's what I want listeners or readers to do. But that poem, it does talk about so much. It's sharing a voice for myself. It's sharing a voice for my mum. It's discussing this quite difficult topic of living this kind of intersectional identity and not knowing exactly where I fit into all of that growing up in the UK. But that's the title of the poem, Lost in Translation, is definitely something I think not only my mother, but those who are from minority or marginalized communities often do feel that kind of feeling lost in translation when they're trying to share who they are in this new world. And I guess that poem is like an attempt to describe that with all those beautiful little details of food and smells and touch and all the senses that kind of come out.
I love poetry. A lot of people don't. And I think one of the reasons is because it's not conversational language. We're used to like storytelling, or, you know, we meet at the pub and we're talking about this is what I did today. But poetry is like taking something that's happened, or taking some subject and trying to distill it into like the most super distilled like substrate, right? The super distilled thing. So I find like poetry takes work sometimes to understand, but obviously you love poetry, you're a poet, but why do you think people, it seems like love-hate.
What's
it about, do you think?
And you know that when you kind of start that conversation with people and you mention poetry, you'll see the look on their face.
I feel like I failed it in
They'll either
A-level.
do what I just did, which is like, yes, poetry, and like I'm like excited, or they'll be like, I don't know where this conversation's going, and kind of switch off. And I guess that's pretty understandable when you think of how poetry is introduced to a lot of us. A lot of us will be familiar with it from a young age, and nursery rhymes, and that would kind of be our first introduction to it, depending on what culture or background we come from. But then when we approach it in schools and in the education system, especially here in kind of the Western world, all of us will automatically think of kind of Shakespeare, Tennyson, like those old dead white men that many of us may not be able to connect to. I was one of the people that hated poetry, which is funny to say now, because it's now everything I do. It's my job, it's my life. But I was that kid that was disengaged. I didn't feel like it was relatable or accessible in the classroom. And it was only when I kind of stepped away from that and recognized that actually coming from a Sikh background and a Sikh faith, and coming from South Asian culture, poetry is nothing new for us. It's something that's existed for thousands of years. And even our scripture in the Sikh faith, our holy book, the Guru Granth Sahib, it's all written in poetic form. It's all written in rhyming couplets. So
the whole thing?
The whole thing, yeah. It's all written in poetic form.
So Sikhs are like destined to be poets.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like in our blood. So this was nothing new for myself. That was something I'd grown up with in our home, in my community. And when I saw that flip side to it, I was like, oh, actually, this is something that's quite accessible for me. And as a teenager, it was then something I was using as an outlet. And I started to use it as a form of therapy to like manage everything I was going through as a teenager.
Say more about that, because that's not what you think like, I'm going through a tough time. I'll go to therapy. I'll go to, a talking group. But most people are not like, I'll go to poetry.
I'll write
poetry.
I'll write poems about all this chaos in my head. Yeah, that is not what most people will think to do. But at that age, this is when I was like 13, 14 years old, did not have access to formal mental health support. And because of the stigma in South Asian culture, as well as other communities
cultures,
too, this is like society-wide, that we just did not talk about mental health. And at that age, anything that I did hear about mental health was always really negative. A lot of like horrible language used for those that were suffering from mental health problems, people that were ostracized in the community. And it was just something we did not talk about. And because of that, I was reluctant to seek help elsewhere. Didn't speak to family about it, didn't speak to friends about it, didn't even speak to like my GP, because it was like a family GP, and I was worried like, would they tell other people? Which of course they can't, it's confidential, but that was where all my fear was. And I needed some outlet for everything I was going through. I was having what I now understand was anxiety attacks, and as a 13-year-old, I thought I was dying. I was like, oh my God, is this a heart attack? Like, couldn't understand what they were. So I turned to the pen. I turned to writing. I had this journal that I still have to this day. I've still got it. And I just started writing out all the feelings. And it just started off as what you would now call like free writing, but that would be just me writing out all my thoughts. And before I knew it, they were turning into poems.
Did you actually use a pen and paper?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is before the age of like everyone writing everything on their phone and typing everything. So it was pen to paper. Yeah.
When I'm working on something, I can feel the difference if I'm writing on my computer and actually like scribbling in my journal. It's just so much more just connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just the physical act of the ink coming out the pen and it leaving onto that page is so therapeutic to me, because I'm like, for me, that feels like it's leaving my body. Like it's, and a lot of my anxiety, a lot of the depression I felt is obviously very physical. It is the feeling of like the tight chest, the breathlessness, the aches in the stomach, the aching back and neck. It is very physical for me. So for me to write it out onto paper and see the ink come out was almost like this feeling of it's leaving my body. And
literally getting it out.
Getting it out.
Yeah.
And obviously I still type, and I have for years. So a lot of my writing requires me to type it. I can't write all of it out by hand. But when it's specifically when I need to let out emotion and I need to do it somewhat immediately, I think writing, definitely pen and paper is the way to go.
The name that you write from, sort of Behind the Netra.
Yeah.
Which means, I think, behind the eyes.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me how you came to choose that nom de plume.
Oh, yeah. This was at the early stages of when I was doing kind of open mic nights around London and doing gigs in the middle of nowhere and having an audience of maybe 2 people and trying to share poetry. And I had this stage name, which was also what I was using on social media. But where that actually all comes from was the fact that I've always been fascinated with linguistics. I've always been fascinated where words come from, the etymology of words. And obviously with South Asian languages, a lot of them have derived from Sanskrit. So whether that's Punjabi or Urdu or Hindi, they have derived from these ancient languages. But sadly, Sanskrit is no longer spoken. It's kind of the same as Latin. It's no longer a spoken language. So I was looking at all these different words and the origins of them, and I came across the word netra, and it had thousands of different interpretations for this one word, but it essentially means kind of behind the eyes, or that saying of your eyes are the window to your soul. And I just thought it was so beautiful and so poetic. So that's where the name came from. But then it kind of grew legs from there, of this idea of all the work that I do, whether it's the poetry, whether it's my teaching journey, whether it's the non-fiction work that I write, all of it is essentially trying to do that. It's trying to see what is behind the netra, what is behind this kind of physical appearance that we see. When we go on a deeper level to get to know people, who are we all as humans? So yeah, that's what netra is.
There's the kind of allusion to the spiritual teachings around like the eyes being in some sort of real, literal way, the eyes to what's inside, like the brightness of the eye or the coldness of the eye or whatever. But this thing that's like, just getting deeper than the surface of things, going beneath the veneer. This is a podcast called Spill the Spirituality. And one of the things we talk about here is that people of all faiths and people who are on a spiritual journey, one of the common hallmarks of spiritual journey, I think, is at least the invitation to go into the basement, to go into the next layer down, to go under the tell, to go under the surface of the water, whatever your analogy is. But that's where the gold is. I wanted to ask you how you do that and how we can do that, because I think it's all well and good to say, like, I tried to be, as a poet or as a pastor or as a human, to see people beneath the kind of outward presentation. How do you actually do that? Do you know?
I don't know if I have the answer.
Tell us the answer.
What
is the gold?
The answer? Who knows? I don't know if I have the answer to that.
No.
And what my world looks like right now and my day-to-day looks like right now is so different to 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, of that Jaspreet on the TED Talk stage, that was at the start of this journey of figuring out who she was and where she belongs and what her purpose is and all those big things. And now, 10 years later, I'm now a mum of two little kids, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, my day looks very different. It is nappies and naps and have you eaten? Have you eaten enough? Have you been stimulated enough? Have you learnt enough today? Are you well rested? It's all these things of parenthood.
And those are just things you're asking the kids,
not
even yourself.
Even myself. Am I rested? Am I fed?
Have I eaten enough?
It's 4 p.m. I've just about had breakfast and had a shower. Yeah, my days look very different now. But it's even in those days, how do you find spirituality in those days? And how do you see it in the everyday, whether it's in the people that you meet or the conversations you have? And if anything, my kids are great at reminding me of that, especially the toddler, the older one. She's now 3. She is wild and wonderful and funny and brave and all those wonderful things. And they both are seeing the world for the first time. And I'll spend the day with them and they'll be noticing all the things around them for the first time that I take for granted. But for example, we're out in the garden this morning and they're on the patio and the 3-year-old's found a snail. And she's fascinated by the snail going up the wall, and the rest of us would pass that by. And it is that reminder of, well, now we call it mindfulness, but it is just to slow down and be present and recognize this beautiful world around us and so much to learn from it. I think that is how we can do it on a daily basis.
One of your first books spoke really directly to the experience of Asian women in Britain, and you pointed to some of those observations around intergenerationality and the Western ideal of not intergenerationality.
Yeah.
What did you learn in writing that book about yourself and other first, second generation Asian women in Britain?
That book was a huge outlet for myself. Like, that was a whole form of therapy for myself, writing that book. But speaking to the women who were included in that book and hearing their stories was incredible. And the whole point of that book, why I decided to write it, I kind of go back to that teenage Jaspreet that I spoke to you about earlier, of not really understanding who she was and where she fit in and where she was meant to exist, and dealing with all these questions. And then as I grew older, went to uni, became a teacher. I was a history teacher in secondary schools here in London for a number of years. And I was teaching in schools that had quite a high demographic of Asian students. And what I could see in the classroom was, for those young Asian girls, was still feeling that way. I could still see what I saw in myself as a teenager, that kind of lack of confidence, all these questions about themselves, trying to navigate these different identities and different cultures. And I was like, I wish there was like a book I could give them to guide them on this, and myself. And then I just kind of took it upon myself to write it. So I interviewed all these incredible Asian women. It was around 150 Asian women in the end, from a range of different demographics, girls as young as kind of 13 years old, all the way up to women in like their 80s and 90s. And I kind of collated all these stories together. And it touches everything from mental health to body image to love and relationships to social media and like living in this digital age. And I still look back at it now, and I'll go back to chapters even now of like, what did I find out here? What did that woman speak to me about here? Or what was that statistic on this specific issue? And I'm still learning from it, even though it's a couple years out now. But yeah, it taught me so much. And it was a book that I wanted it to reach as many hands as possible, not only Asian girls and women. That's who it was initially directed for, is like our manifesto, our guidebook. But then I wanted everybody else to read it. I wanted Asian men to read it, to see how they could be better allies to Asian women. I wanted every other demographic to read it, because Asian women make up quite a large population here in the UK. How can we not understand their stories and their existence here? So I'm like trying to get it to every corner of the earth if I can.
Well, I hope this podcast helps get that even more out there. It's had great success so far. Is there anything that, I'm sure there is lots of things, but something that you feel like you come back to over and over again that like was an epiphany writing that book?
It's something I do have to remind myself when whether it's things I'm questioning, whether it's things I'm struggling with, is that I'm not alone in this. And I think that is one of the key messages from that book. It's why I called it Brown Girl Like Me, because I felt like I can't be the only brown girl like me going through this or feeling this or thinking this. So that is a really nice reminder to me sometimes when I'm struggling with anything or questioning things, that there are other women, other people out there like me who are also questioning the same thing or trying to navigate this same issue. And one of the most beautiful messages from this book was that there's this amazing sisterhood of South Asian women that is starting to grow and exist. And towards the end of the book, it looks at how the digital age has been a bit of a double-edged sword for South Asian women and for women of colour. On the one hand, it can be quite a scary, dangerous place, but on the kind of flip side, on the positive side, it has allowed a lot of women of colour to connect with one another, to find a sisterhood, to find some allyship. It's allowing us to educate others on our issues and build allyship with others. That is something I have to remind myself, and it's one of the most beautiful messages from that book, that this kind of sisterhood exists, and to lean on it. You're not going through this alone. And I guess this comes back to that idea of like community and like communal care, that the only way we're going to be able to survive as a society is if we lean on one another, and not do this alone. I've built this little solidarity group with, whether it's a group of a mum's group, whether it's writers that will message one another when we're struggling or dealing with writer's block, or sharing ideas and tips with one another. Like, I think that's like something I've built in all parts of my life, to have like these support systems. Otherwise I don't know how I do it. It's
one of the old stereotypes, and it's probably a stereotype from like old white male writers, but maybe more ubiquitous than that. But sense of like the writer is someone who goes away into the private zone, like off the map, to do what in a cabin. She or he does. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, and maybe, I don't know, like the writer is someone who plays by herself in the treehouse, and, you know, then comes down with the goods.
This is huge fiction book.
It's fiction for you. So you are kind of, is your whole life, or your whole process is much more connected, it sounds like. I think there's a bit of that. There's an element of where I do need to just kind of switch off from everything else. For the books that I've written, there was the period of time where I did need to do that, just to kind of switch off everything else around me and just deep dive into the research and the writing. There's that really great book of deep work, where the premise is, I just needed that time to focus into that deep work. But prior to that, I think it does need a lot of that, like togetherness and connection and conversations. Like, a lot of my writing is inspired by conversations. Yes, some of it just comes to my head in the shower or on the tube, but a lot of it is inspired by connection with other people. Because I write about everything. It's not just mental health, but I write about love, and I write about friendship, and I write about grief, and I write about loss. And I think those come from conversations and connection. These are the big human themes, right? You know, you're writing about the real stuff, the behind the netra stuff. You probably guessed from the name of the podcast that this is a show about spirituality. And we're really interested, of course, in our guests' spiritual journeys. And we, as I said in the intro, like we mean when we say spirituality, we mean like in the broad church, if you will. You know, how do you mentioned Sikh background and heritage. You mentioned the couplets of Sikh scripture. What does that mean for you now to be spiritual?
Oh, that's a nice question. Yeah, it's meant different things to me at different stages of my life, and I guess I've found spirituality at different points of my life. And I found it in the unexpected places. I grew up in a Sikh household. Grew up with Sikh parents, Sikh grandparents, would visit the Gurdwara every week, grew up with family reading scripture, and we would have hymns playing in the house. So the Sikh faith was very much something I grew up with. Whether I connected to it spiritually at a young age, I don't think so. It was more of the practice of doing, which I guess a lot of people might feel when they were young.
When you say that, can I just butt in? Like, what does, just for the sake of, I think this is what we would try to explore. When you say, maybe I did the practices, but I don't know that I connected with it spiritually. When you say connected spiritually, what do you mean as the adult Jaspreet now?
Adult Jaspreet now of, did I really feel it? Did I really feel it in my gut? Did I really feel and believe the words that I was reading and the things that I was saying and doing, and I understood the history and the politics and the social and economic issues that all came with that, the growth of the Sikh faith, and understood that context of it. But did I really feel it?
Yeah, I gotcha.
It's something that came when I was at uni, which is an interesting time for it to happen, because I think at the same time as a lot of my peers going through Freshers Week and partying and being out there, that was not the experience I had at uni. I was still living at home and I would commute into uni. So I think that kind of changed my experience and context of uni life. I was a big nerd. I'd be in the library all the time. I loved like academia. I loved like reading and having my head in books. And it was when I'd finished my history degree and I decided to go on and do a master's in gender studies. And I remember my family were like, what is gender studies? Like, and what do you mean you're going to go do a master's?
Study that?
Can you study that? And the most important question was like, can you get a job with that? And
not very easily, it turns out.
Not very easy. No, definitely not with the arts. And I was studying gender and understanding all these different kind of theory behind gender. And that year we got to write a thesis on an issue or a topic we wanted to find out about. So I was like, okay, what do I want to write about? And I wrote about a really heavy topic and researched on son preference in the South Asian community. Wow. And how even till this day, in a lot of South Asian communities, people will prefer to have a son over a daughter. And this has resulted in sex selective abortions. This has resulted in female infanticide. And this is not a faraway issue only happening in South Asia, but this is something that's even come out happening here in the UK as well. There's like recent statistics that have come out about the disproportional ratio of the number of boys and girls that are born in Indian communities. So really, really scary statistics of how many missing girls there are if you're looking at all this data. And funny enough, that is when I found my spirituality. Wow. Because in the Sikh faith, we believe that all genders should be seen as equal. And the premise of the Sikh faith, some of the founding principles of it, is that men and women should be seen equally. This is why you may know that Sikh women have the last name Kaur and Sikh men have the last name Singh. The reason why women are given the name Kaur is so that when and if they get married, their last name doesn't have to change, and it's not like they're being given to one man to another. They are their own woman in their own right. They are a Kaur. They don't take their husband's name.
No,
you don't have to take your husband's name. People do, just if they want to.
Yeah.
But that is the premise of why.
Presumably you haven't.
I have on paper.
On paper, okay.
But what I call myself and how I will represent myself is I'm Jaspreet Kaur.
Okay.
So I have not been passed from one family line to another.
Got it.
It also removes the premise of having a caste system. So if you don't know anyone's last name, you don't know what caste people have come from, so all people are seen as equal. So it's such a beautiful idea of what Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the founder of the Sikh faith, these are kind of some of the key principles that came out from him, and then the 10th Guru, which is Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And the idea that the gurus were saying that practices like son preference or female infanticide, all these things should be eradicated, and really wanting men and women to be seen as equal. So I was like, wow, like the Sikh faith is a feminist faith. This is incredible. But why is it that where the Sikh faith comes from in Punjab, northern India, Punjab being split into two, half of it on the India side, half of it on the Pakistan side since partition. But why in Punjab did it have some of the highest rates of female infanticide going on and some of the highest rates of this kind of disproportional gender ratio, when in fact the faith is meant to be promoting gender equality? And the research found like there was economic reasons for this, there's cultural reasons for this, there's people wanting to pass on their family name, inheritance, all those sorts of things. That's why it's still happening. But the faith is saying the complete opposite. Yeah. And that's when I connected to spirituality, because it's where my ideologies, my values, and then my faith kind of all aligned suddenly. Yeah. So I found
at uni,
in libraries, in books, in research, in data. So it was in the strangest place. And I found it I went to a girls' home in Punjab, in Jalandhar. It's an incredible girls' home called Unique Girls' Home. And what they do is they support and help girls that have been abandoned by their families, or gone missing and they've been found, and it's a girls' home to really help these girls get on their feet, start as young as newborn babies all the way up till they're 18, and kind of help them find work, education, and really get them up on their feet. And I volunteered there for about 2 weeks when I was doing this research. And the 2 weeks that I was there, the girls' home, they have a window where babies can be dropped in the middle of the night. Obviously, people don't want to do this in broad daylight because they're embarrassed, because of the stigma. We had newborn babies arriving in that window, and it would set off an alarm on the inside so we would know if the baby's being placed. Gosh. And I remember being there and hearing that alarm twice. And I'll never forget, like even now, like my body is like feeling it. Like I'll never forget that feeling of people abandoning their baby girls because of all these reasons. This is, forget the data and the statistics and the research. This is the reality. These are these baby girls turning up. And now being a mum of a girl who is my whole world, how could someone not want that? And that's where my spirituality was found, there.
That's such a, God, it's so poignant, especially the through line of that volunteering you did. In some ways, it doesn't surprise me. At uni, I think, or uni age, that age for kids who don't go to uni, but that's something about in your late teens, late 20s, where you begin to shift and think about, what am I for? I grew up in a place where the church, in the general sense of the word, the general church was like very conservative, you know, similar messages around women. This is like the South in like the 1980s, you know, South the U.S. Messages about gay people. I was this closeted gay kid. I said, you know, but weirdly, when I began to read the scriptures and study the texts, and when I had these experiences of God, those things, those texts, those literatures, the commentaries, the direct experience of God is just sort of feeling it. That helped me come out of the closet. I'm so grateful for that. I feel lucky, grateful, blessed, because like for so many folks, when they go deep into the Christian religion, but not just the Christian religion, I think for gay kids, there's this sense of like, here's Jesus, I'll speak from my tradition, talking about the truth will set you free. However, why does the church practice something that seems really different? So it's really interesting. You're talking about like sometimes the first text, the first things are so liberating, and yet it's like the followers of that tradition or that guru or that person don't always practice what they said. You know? And that's the rub. You know?
This is it. And I think this goes for all faiths. It's that continuous challenge of things being interpreted in different ways, or the original scripture or understanding or values get lost along the way. And then when you combine faith with culture, then other
which it always
mess.
is. How can it not be combined? You know, like
when you've got culture is something that's naturally going to happen in any place, any geography, that will then impact how faith is interpreted or lived in our daily lives. So I think that's the ongoing battle for myself of understanding the cultural issues. How do I put that aside to my faith values and remembering what they are? And it's that constant kind of conversation.
Has there been I'm just thinking, that sounds, the battle between the culture or the world and faith, which is not always a battle. Sometimes they really align. But is there a time recently or in the past where you've like felt that tension and made a decision for your faith values in a way that felt costly?
I think I'm always going against whenever there is that challenge. I guess I see it taking place and it frustrates me. The obvious one is when I had a baby girl, she was our first, and hearing comments from like members of our community and even members of my direct family saying, oh, don't worry, like the next one, hopefully you'll have a boy, or when are you going to start trying again or trying for another? As if my daughter isn't enough, and she's the whole world, and her alone would have been more than enough, and our second was just another blessing into our lives. But to hear things like that, yeah, that's where the rage is.
Yeah. That's a holy rage, though, I think.
This is where the rage comes from and boils and grows in my belly. And then I channel it. I channel it into writing, and I channel it into poetry, and I channel it into the work that I do, because there's only so much change you can make sometimes on those kind of cultural community levels, because some people don't want to change and it won't happen immediately. But I know over time, sometimes that bigger change is going to happen. And we see it happening. There's some really great organizations that do a lot of work around this. There's something called the Pink Laddu Project, by a really good friend of mine. Her name's Raj. And what that was set up on was on the premise of when baby boys are born in South Asian communities, often they'd give out laddus when a boy is born. So laddu being sweets, mithai, and it's a gift you would give to family in your community when a boy was born. And that's something that was going on for hundreds of years. And
just for the boys?
For just the boys, when the boys were born. So she introduced this project called the Pink Laddu Project. So when baby girls are born, it should absolutely be a celebration too. And people would have now started giving out pink laddus or any sweets. And my family was so supportive, both sides of my family, my in-laws and my side of the family, when my daughter was born.
Did you give out pink laddus?
Yeah, was a huge celebration.
Oh, I love it.
And we celebrated it, and she's adored. She's the first grandchild on my in-laws side. So yeah, you can imagine like how ecstatic they were. But yeah, it's an ongoing fight. And even myself as a parent now, I'm questioning things I say on a daily basis, things that were ingrained from how I was parented, or just social values that we're just so used to saying. And I'll say certain things and it'll just kind of slip out of my mouth to my daughter, or I'll say certain things to my son and I'll be like, oh no, I want to take that back. Like, actually, I'm not going to say that again like that. And just giving them the element of choice and thinking about the toys that they interact with every day, or the clothes that they wear, like what kind of gender values and gender normative behavior am I pushing on them? When you become a parent or you're around young people, you then recognize how much you're trying to unlearn yourself.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's why, like, when the things that weigh us down culturally, and I'm not just thinking about South Asian culture, but just the culture in general, cultures. They are. It's not about individual choices all the time. Like what is, say, unlearning. Like there are things that the way your brain has been formed, the way the grooves are in your thinking pathways are towards unconscious beliefs about everything. About everything, good and bad. So when people say things that I feel like are out of line with my culture, at least, or the culture I'm trying to live out, or when I do that, there can be a grace there, because it's like, well, we're just speaking from what we know, and that doesn't mean we should stay there. Change is hard. I mean, turns out really shit at it.
It does not happen overnight.
I do think it's possible and even preferable. Like I think that's what the spiritual journey is. It is a journey of, in some way, and people will interpret this world differently, it's a journey of transformation, I believe. That involves my own will and agency and choice, but also primarily involves God's movement. And I feel sort of ignorant. How do Sikhs refer to the divine?
We would say Waheguru.
Say again?
Waheguru.
Yeah. And is that a being?
That is a genderless being. We won't say he, she, which is another really interesting concept in the Sikh faith as well. About
in the scriptures, it's genderless.
It's genderless. Yeah, there is no he, she pronouns being used. So when we refer to Waheguru, it's actually kind of in genderless form, which again, amazing. When I'm kind of seeing how my feminist ideology kind of matches up with my spirituality. But in scripture, which is another beautiful thing about the Sikh faith, we will use other references to the divine as well. So Allah, Rab, so other faiths' names as well are in there too. But essentially what it is saying is, yes, we may be using all these different names for the divine, but it is all one source. When you think of what the divine is like, what are the attributes or the personality characteristics or that way, what's the nature of the divine for you?
Like, what does that make sense? What are they like?
Yeah, what are they
what
like?
Are they like?
Yeah, because I'm not going to designate physical attributes to them, but it was like, what are they like?
For you, and how do you experience? I'm not asking for like your art, like a Sikh RE exam.
This is where I'm going to get all poetic.
Oh, please, yes. Let's go back to poetry.
Again, it's a feeling, and the feeling of it is like, say when you're sitting outside on like a beautiful sunny day and you close your eyes and you can feel like the sun on your eyelids and you feel like the warmth on your skin. That's how I feel the divine. So when you can kind of still see the sun kind of blaring into your eyes and you can feel the warmth on your skin, that is how I would describe the physical feeling. And obviously I would describe them as kind, as warm, as empathetic. But then there's also this flip side of like strength and power. And I've always really resonated with the word power and what that means to different people and how I see it, because there's times in my life where I felt powerless and not in control of myself physically or mentally, feeling powerless. So when I think of the divine, I think of like this really beautiful power, and that helps empower me. I love that as well. I love that visual, and we both closed our eyes when you said that. Closing my eyes and feeling it. Yeah.
But the visual and the feeling sense of the sun on your face and your eyes, and even in England, that's possible because it's of course it's an analogy, so that you're saying you can feel that even on a grey day. On a grey day,
it's not. If I think about the divine, that's what I can start to feel. Yeah. And there's been some of the darkest moments of my life, that feeling comes to me.
I'm a Christian, as you know, but also, and I talk about this all the time, so it's like part of 12-step recovery community, and I'm a recovering alcoholic for a long time. And I experience in those, we call them the rooms of recovery, so the spaces and communities of recovery. I experience God moving all the time. Like I say, much more than I feel God moving in church, and I love church. But there's in the sort of spiritual process, the process of spiritual transformation that's in 12 steps. The first 3 steps are crucial. You can't really go any deeper in the journey without the first 3. Okay. And the first one is admitting. It starts with your problem, which is, in this case, drinking, but underneath the drinking, behind the netra of drinking, there is something deeper. So what's the thing? So identifying that and realizing, admitting, I'm powerless. I do not have the power myself to change the circumstance I'm in. Oh, wow. Okay. So that's the first step. You have to admit defeat, in a sense, which is a paradoxical win. Yeah. But you have to admit defeat. The second one, I thought about this when you said you're kind of in touch with power. The second one is coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And then 3 is like making a decision to turn your life over to the care of that power. But I just love that. So the first 2 steps is one, it's not saying I don't have any power at all. It's just saying, like, in this situation, in this really complex, multi-layered thing called addiction, called existence, I can't sort myself out. Yeah. I don't have power enough. And there is a power who can. And for me, I mean, I think there are lots of faiths and spiritualities within those faiths that would say, don't like thinking about God as a powerful God. Like, I respect that. Yeah. But for me, Lord Jesus, I need a God who has the power to pull me out of the mess that I continue to make. Yeah. And I
resonate with that completely. Like, when I've been at those really dark, horrible moments, like, I need a power to pull me out. Like, as much as I need the kind, soft, empathetic light, I need like a really powerful light to pull me out of this. And as you were speaking, there was something else I thought I'd mention of in the Sikh faith, the number 13 is quite an auspicious number, because the number 13 in Punjabi is tera. Tera also means yours. Okay. So the number 13, tera, also means yours. And that's also a number I always come back to when I'm really struggling and feel a bit lost or out of control is reminding myself that sab kuch tera means everything is yours, and surrendering
to yours being
the divine.
God's. Yeah.
And then I'll repeat like tera. So I'm basically repeating 13, 13, 13, which in the Western world is an unlucky number, which is quite funny. And I'm born on the 13th of June. Days in June, 13th. So I'm born on the 13th, which is another nice reminder of when I'm feeling lost or out of control or powerless, reminding myself that actually sab kuch tera, like everything is yours, and I will surrender to that. And the moment I do that, everything feels better. I'm like, everything's actually okay. Like I literally like feel the weight like off my shoulders.
Thank you for saying that. And I think there are all these different images, and I think one of the things I love about this podcast is that we're all of us in this community of listeners and, you know, people who watch and comment are searching for this thing that is no thing, which is God or divine. And for some folks, like I find some folks, the idea of like surrendering to that is like, no, I can't, like thinking about feminist critiques.
I was just about to say,
like I don't want to surrender.
Opposite of my feminist ideology.
Like don't surrender. I gotta claim my power. But I think this is, and if that's what folks are, great. You know, good news is that God is big enough to hold all these different ways in. But there is something, I don't know if it's a soft feminism or a third wave feminism or a fourth wave feminism, or the sense of like, actually, one can both be like seeking justice for women and trans folks and, you know, all people in society, and have a spiritual sensation, which is I'm letting go and surrendering and offering into the hands, into the love of this thing that's bigger than me. And like, aren't we contradictions?
Yes, aren't we contradictions? And that's where I think sometimes I didn't understand whether I fit into the feminist movement, because historically that there wasn't space for that, because understandably the context of the time and where the feminist movement grew in the Western world, that is, that a lot of women felt like what religion was telling them wasn't aligning with their feminism. But exactly as you just said there, they can be synonymous. You can have both. And does that not make me more powerful, that I can also surrender? I think so. A choice to let go. And I guess maybe easier for Sikhs, because God in Jewish and Christian scripture is often referred to in the masculine, not always. But like, you know, if you're surrendering into the divine, it's not like you're surrendering into the hands of a great big man. You're surrendering to something that's beyond gender, beyond all of that, and yet somehow deeply present in us. And going back to the poem, deeply present in the turmeric stained hands and the names that require difficulty or energy to pronounce. I was thinking about like, and I want to honor your time. We need to wrap up. It's been lovely to hear you, but like thinking about the names for God in so many scriptures are take a lot of energy to pronounce. You know, God is the English word, but all the original texts in Hebrew, in Greek, in Sanskrit, these names are really long,
polysyllabic. And isn't that something? It should take energy
and alertness
to say God's name. You know. Our Jewish brothers and sisters would say, like, we have to be very careful when we don't even speak God's real name, because it's so other. So we have to be careful. There's so much power charging through it. We can't treat it like it's a cartoon. And I love that too. While I also love that in Christianity, Jesus calls God Abba, like dad, you know, which I love that too. Oh, it has been so lovely talking to you. I think I could talk to you all day, but we're not going to talk all day because you have to get back to your kids, I assume. It's been really, really lovely to have you. If you'd like, friends, to find Jaspreet on all the places, you can go on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Facebook, Behind the Netra. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for the poetry. Thanks for the stories. Thanks for the soft feminism and the belly full of rage at the same time.
Yes.
Thank you for showing up so beautifully and interestingly today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. Spill the Spirituality is always on with new content every single week, so please subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you're listening to this on podcast form, all of our new episodes are now available in glorious moving pictures on YouTube. So just search for Spill the Spirituality. This podcast is a project of the Methodist Church in Britain. Our producers are John Ryan and Rachel Matthews, and I'm Trey Hall. Until next time, peace.